so loud and physical. And we aren't just talking about the streets of Los Angeles. The California Senator Alex Padilla showing up to a press conference with the DHS Secretary Christy Noem.
Hands up, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your...
I also want to...
By the way, did you know that they ended up meeting face-to-face shortly after that? We're going to tell you what happened when they did and what both are saying tonight. Plus, forget the farms. Is President Trump about to stop ICE officers from detaining many of the people who help grow our food?
They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not.
But did the DHS Secretary just suggest something else? Plus, hitting the gas. How the newest lane in the Trump versus California battle centers around electric vehicles. Why Elon Musk is likely watching this evening. Also tonight, a Democratic dilemma. How the party just booted one of its newest leaders, and why part of the conversation is now based around gender. Hello, good evening. I'm Blake Burman. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. We have watched for nearly a week the anti-ICE protests, in many instances turning violent. But today, a focus as well on the leaders involved. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is here on the Hill joining us in a moment, but we begin tonight with our Joe Khalil on that incident in Los Angeles involving that United States Senator. Joe?
Yeah, hey, Blake, it's hard to say things are shocking anymore, given what we've seen the last couple of years in Congress, but this video was shocking, watching Senator Padilla being detained and pushed out of that room and put in handcuffs. And I think the reaction I've been getting from lawmakers, we've talked to many of them, reflects that level of magnitude. I want to start off first with what we're also hearing, which is two different narratives about that event. So take a listen to how Senator Padilla described what he says is a larger symptom of the Trump administration leaning into authoritarian tactics, and Christy Noem describing it, saying that the senator was totally out of line to show up uninvited and shout questions. Take a listen.
If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers.
I think everybody in America would agree that that wasn't appropriate. That if you wanted to have a civil discussion, especially as a leader, a public official, that you would reach out and try to have a conversation.
So, Blake, the two narratives there falling along party lines. We've seen that in this building today as well. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson addressing this situation, also saying Senator Padilla was in the wrong based on what Speaker Johnson watched. Also talked to Jamie Raskin, a Democrat, just on the steps behind me. And we asked him if this is going to have a chilling effect. Are Democrats going to stop protesting or be more hesitant? He told me quite the opposite will happen. This is going to rally Democrats. And he also said this. So you're going to hear from both of them. Take a listen.
And none of us is a subject to Donald Trump. None of us is a subject to Mike Johnson. We are all citizens.
A sitting member of Congress should not act like that. It is beneath a member of Congress. It is beneath a U.S. senator. They're supposed to lead by example. And
as soon as this happened, Blake, the entire California delegation gathered here demanding steps and an investigation. But Democrats don't control Congress, Blake.
All right, Joe Khalil, live tonight up on the Hill. Joe, thank you. So as that was happening, by the way, there was a fiery hearing up on Capitol Hill as Democratic governors from 3 sanctuary states faced off with Republicans on the Oversight Committee. The New York governor, Kathy Hochul, the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritsker, and the governor from Minnesota, Tim Walz, defending sanctuary city status, or jurisdiction status, really, where cooperation with federal immigration authorities is limited. Governors Walz and Pritsker defended their state's policies.
I don't call federal law enforcement officers Gestapo. You were recently quoted. Where's the apology?
Donald Trump.
Oh, no, Donald Trump didn't. Listen, Donald Trump's not here.
Yeah.
You are, Governor.
Yeah.
You're a big boy. Put your big boy pants on.
ask.
I will stand in the way of Tom Homan going after people who don't deserve to be frightened in their communities, who don't deserve to be threatened, terrorized.
But the biggest fireworks at that hearing coming with New York's governor, Kathy Hochul.
So let's talk about Sebastian Zepeda Khalil. Do you know who that is?
I don't have the specific details at my disposal, no.
Well, this is an illegal migrant in New York because of your sanctuary state policies. Do you know what crime he committed?
I'm not familiar at this moment.
I bet you're going to be familiar when I remind you. He found a sleeping woman on the subway, lit her on fire, and burned her alive. This is in Kathy Hochul's New York. And as I'm sure you are aware, and I'll remind you, that ICE issued an order to detain this violent criminal, but that was rejected by New York officials due to sanctuary state laws.
And the Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene bringing up Laken Riley, the University of Georgia student murdered by an illegal immigrant.
Don't you dare smile about the murder of Laken Riley.
About her parents.
The third time, you are responsible for the murder of this little girl, Laken Riley.
Joining me now is the Republican from the state of Georgia, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, back once again with us here on the Hill. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us tonight. That was just some of what transpired inside that hearing there. It got very loud. It was very vocal. I wonder, though, if you got anything out of it.
Well, one thing I did find out is Kathy Hochul is completely committed to the sanctuary policies of New York. She said she is a proud registered Democrat. She said that she supported Joe Biden for president. And she said that she faithfully upholds the Constitution and laws of New York, and those laws are sanctuary policies. Her state also paid for the flight that monster that killed Laken Riley, the flight from New York to Georgia. They paid for that flight. They sent him into our state where he came and brutally murdered Laken Riley. So that's what I learned today is the governor of New York is committed to continue those type of horrific actions against Americans, and she's not sorry. She did not apologize.
There was the back and forth. We just played some of it with Elise Stefanik, your colleague from New York, and the governor of New York, and there's a very real question if that is going to be the governor's race there in that state in the not-too-distant future. Based off of what you saw there with Congresswoman Stefanik, do you believe that she's the best one to take on Kathy Hochul potentially?
I think Elise is fantastic. I think that New Yorkers will have an opportunity at a real race. You know, Elise, she brought up a horrific, I mean, what kind of situation is that? A homeless woman, already at the bottom in life, was set on fire by an illegal alien, a monster, another monster, in New York on the subway and burned alive. I mean, and that happened under Kathy Hochul's watch. No one is safe in New York under Kathy Hochul. So I certainly hope to see that match up, and I hope the people in New York really get it right this time, because that state is beyond repair under Democrat rule.
Here's part of the pushback from the other side, for example. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, and I'll get your reaction.
Let's be honest. They're arresting dishwashers, people at Home Depot at work, and their donors benefit. You know it. The restaurant industry benefit. They know exactly what they're doing. If they even wanted to fix this immigration system, they'd go to the people that employ them.
They're arresting dishwashers, people at Home Depot at work. J.B. Pritsker also says you're terrorizing communities, rather, are being terrorized. What's the worry, Congressman, that maybe this could be going too far?
Well, the reality is everyone that crosses our border illegally is breaking our laws. So that makes them a criminal when they come across our border illegally. That's the reality. And Pritsker, as far as Governor Pritsker is concerned, you know, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he seemingly thinks that he is above everyone. So he doesn't care about the American citizens in his state of Illinois. He seemingly only cares about illegal immigrants that broke our laws coming into our our country.
There is I'm going to get to this with Kat Kamik, who's from Florida, on your side of the aisle later in the show. But the president also brought up the issue today of farm workers, and there's obviously a big ag community in Georgia. do you want ICE going into the farms and deporting farm workers who are illegal immigrants?
I support President Trump and his administration of deporting people that broke our laws, and so did the American people. That's why he overwhelmingly won the election in November of 2024. 312 electoral college votes. He won the popular vote. This was a demand of the American people that we're tired of our country being invaded. And so God bless President Trump and his administration that is actually following through. For once, we're seeing leaders follow through on what the American people wanted.
So I take it you'd be okay with that if it happens?
I am, again, in support of President Trump deporting criminals that have broken the laws of America, and that's what the American people support as well.
Let me leave you with this, Senator Padilla. Your reaction to what I presume you saw at this point in time, do you believe he should be censured?
You know, I think there's something very important to point out is you see this pin that I'm wearing right now. This pin identifies every member of Congress and every senator. And I was watching that video on this network as we were leading up to this interview, and I didn't see his pin on him, and I didn't see him identify himself as a U.S. Senator. And I think that's really important for the people to understand as Secret Service and all Capitol Police are trained to see these pins, to understand who we are. He came in very aggressively, and then he actually fought police. He actually resisted arrest and was aggressively refused to leave. You know,
do you think any action should be taken
under the Biden administration? Yes, I think he should be charged. He should be prosecuted. Under the Biden administration, you never saw any Republican member of Congress or senator going out aggressively towards the Biden administration secretaries and cabinet officials. You never saw us do that. You never saw us fighting police officers and resisting arrest. And again, you know, Democrats told us for 4 years, and the press told us, no one is above the law. No one is above the law, and he is certainly not above the law.
We'll leave it there. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the Republican from the state of Georgia with us once again here on the Hill. Congresswoman, thanks so much. Talk again soon. It has now been 1 week, of course, of anti-ICE demonstrations in L.A. There have been nearly 400 arrests and detentions since Saturday when the protests began. Secretary Christy Noem in Los Angeles today, and she addressed those raids.
We've been out on operations with law enforcement officers, and so we've covered quite a bit of territory, and I'll still be here doing different things in different areas. But I would say that everybody should want their downtown, and if you're a business owner in a downtown, if you're a family that lives there, you want it to be safe.
Similar protests happening in nearby communities, including Huntington Park. That's about 6 miles south there of L.A. Secretary Noem spotted in that community earlier today. ICE raids also happened at a Home Depot there on Monday. And with us now here on the Hill is the mayor of Huntington Park, a Democrat, Arturo Flores. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Flores, also a former Marine. Thanks for being with us tonight. Let me start with you, sir, where I left off with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm sure you just heard some of it there. Your view from your side of the aisle and a Democrat in that state of what you believe should happen next.
Thank you for having me. I just want to start off first and foremost by saying, you know, before I am a Democrat, before that I'm an American, and I'm an American who served in the United States Marine Corps and who fought 2 wars in defense of this nation. So I was listening in on what the Congresswoman was saying on when you asked her the question about President Trump and his shift with the farm workers. I don't know, was it me or did I understand that the Congresswoman is actually in support of undocumented individuals that are not criminals? Because that's the majority of the individuals that are being arrested here in Los Angeles and the surrounding area. So it's great to see some of those progressive values. And as you can see,
you don't believe that you don't believe it is criminal when they cross the border illegally?
Well, the argument has been, and I don't want to get too much into it, but the argument has been made that it might not be a criminal aspect and more of a civil matter between the government and those individuals. But I know that you mentioned that there's similar protests that are going on in our city, like Los Angeles. I will tell you this, we have had protests in our city, a couple hundred people. They have not been anywhere close to the extent that they've been in Los Angeles, to the point where they've had to deploy, I mean, what we're seeing on the screen. Our city has not experienced that, and I think I want to make it very clear to the nation that we have cities, individuals, Americans that are protesting peacefully, And whenever somebody starts getting on a line, police is deployed, they go home, they disperse, and it's over. What we're seeing here in Los Angeles is a hyper focus on 3 to 4 blocks around the federal buildings that spill out into the freeways. And you have to understand, Los Angeles is 500 square miles, and you're talking about 4 to 5 blocks here. So the situation in LA has been severely exaggerated. The mayor of LA has not called for National Guard or federalized National Guard, has not called for the mobilization of Marines. The governor of the state of California has not called for the federalized National Guard or Marines as well. So these are the local leaders on the ground that are making the assessments in real time on what's happening, and we're having the federal government coming in and making these arbitrary decisions that are leading towards escalation.
Wanted you to hear from both sides of the aisle tonight. Arturo Flores is the mayor there in Huntington Park with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, got to leave it there. Still to come tonight here on the Hill is Trump in the driver's seat. Why he's hitting the brakes on EVs out west. Plus, an exclusive ride-along, our Allie Bradley teams up with the Border Patrol as they make a big move. And a live look over at the White House. Did you know there's a thing called the annual picnic? But who wasn't invited? Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Burman. We thank you for being with us here on the Hill. We'll be back in 4 minutes, other side of the break.
Management.
Today we're saving California and we're saving our entire country from a disaster. Your cars are going to be thousands of dollars less money.
That, of course, President Trump this afternoon announcing the end to California's electric vehicle mandate. The president signing a trio of resolutions that prevent the Golden State's plan to require 100% of the vehicles to be zero emissions by 2035. California and 10 other states suing. Now, California, the governor there, Gavin Newsom, releasing this statement saying in part, quote, "The Trump's all-out assault on California continues. This time he's destroying our clean air and America's global competitiveness in the process." The president also mentioned Elon Musk in the middle of this today.
I'm amazed that he's endorsing me because that can't be good for him. I'm abolishing the EV mandate. And I once asked him about it. You never talked to me about that. He's very, a friend of mine, and he makes electric cars, and we're saying you're not going to be able to make electric cars.
Joining me now, Mick Mulaney, former Trump White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor, and Dan Cannon, former Battleground States Director, NewsNation, with us tonight here on News. I almost gave you the contributor label. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you want to take
promotion.
So I can't help but notice, Mick, that we've got this major story in California.
One of your
that you're not wearing one of my ties. There's this major story in California. Yeah. Elon Musk is no longer involved with the White House, and then Trump comes out with this today. So who's this geared toward? Is this Trump taking on California? Trump taking on Newsom? Trump going forward with this now that Elon's not involved? All of the above? None of the above?
I don't say this lightly. I actually, for a rare case, I think you're overreading this one.
Really?
Yeah, this is pretty.
Cannon, I think, is going to take the other side of that.
This is pretty basic. Republicans hate the EV mandate. Period. End of story.
Why do it now?
California. They've been waiting for, well, that's a good question. The timing, maybe.
Right.
But this is good policy for Republicans regardless. And it's good legal policy. Keep in mind that one of the few times that Republicans actually do believe the federal government gets to trump the states is on the Interstate Commerce Clause. If it's legal to build an internal combustion engine in this country, it's got to be legal to sell them in California. This is a pretty solid conservative Republican argument.
You think, though, there's a thread here?
I do, and I'm not going to argue with Mick on the merits of the Republican. Well, on the merits I'll argue, but on their issue of wanting to repeal the EV mandates and other EV incentives, the IRA tax incentives in the reconciliation bill are
which we hate
as well. Sure, and if you really want to onshore manufacturing in this country, that 45X production manufacturing tax credit would be a great way to do it, but we're going to take that out.
Okay.
But I think as much as they genuinely believe in this policy, as misguided as you and the other Republicans are, Mick, they want this argument now because this is Donald Trump versus California. And I notice it's about California. It's also about Gavin Newsom. Yeah. And then at the same time, we're hauling in Pritsker and Walz and kind of roping them in the immigration debate with the sanctuary cities hearing today. I think all that's about taking 2028 contenders, putting them in the hot seat, and Donald Trump Republicans would love nothing more than run against California.
Is it really news that politics drives the debate in Washington, D.C.?
I guess what
probably not.
I guess, though, Mick, the question is, like, Dan's point is They're trying to make it Trump versus California.
Yep.
And Trump is taking on sort of the California debate here.
Yeah, okay, we'll plead guilty to that for sake of this discussion. So what? I mean, it's a good argument for Trump to have. It really is. I thought the really interesting question was something you asked last night to Nancy Mace in South Carolina.
Good to know I asked an interesting question.
You did. You didn't overread it last night. You know, you have good days and bad days.
Yep.
Is that, you know, there's a lot of Republicans in California. There's more Republicans in Los Angeles County than there are in South Carolina, for example. So I think that's an interesting sort of issue to raise. When you beat up on California, you're also beating up on Republicans. And I think there's a lot of Republicans in the House who have to run for re-election who are going to be a little bit skittish about that.
By the way, Americans' likelihood to buy a fully electric vehicle back in 2022, unlikely, 51%. Unlikely now in 2025, 63%.
I own a fully electric vehicle.
But
real quick, I got to run.
In that same time frame, 2021, we sold about 150,000 a quarter. It's now 400,000 a quarter.
Yep.
So that poll may say that, but the sales are going up.
All right, we'll leave it there. See you both back later in the show.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you come up
guys.
with a good question in the next segment. So you never know.
Still much more ahead here on the Hill. Border Patrol carries out a big bust in Southern California. We are there for the operation. Allie Bradley with us live. And what about what the president got at today? Farm workers who are here illegally. What to do about that next, and what the president signaled today when we return.
.com.
Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. 6:30 here in Washington. Anti-ICE protests entering the 7th day in Los Angeles, and there are continued demonstrations all around the country as well. In Texas, for example, Governor Abbott just deployed 5,000 National Guard troops. He says they won't, quote, tolerate the lawlessness that we've seen in L.A. This is out there in Denver. Almost 20 people arrested yesterday. Pepper balls used to disperse the crowds there. Scenes as well also in Chicago at this point. That was part of the scene earlier this week. More than a dozen arrested. Secretary Christy Noem announcing new action today to find out what's going on.
The DEA, the FBI, and their investigative teams have been fantastic with their leadership, and we also have the IRS here that's helping us track how these violent protesters are funded.
All told, there have been protests in over 20 cities all across the United States. Of course, L.A. being the main part of it right now. That's where we find our Allie Bradley once again live with us tonight, and alongside Border Patrol, seatbelt on, looking at the camera. Where are you? Where are you headed?
Yeah, hey, Blake. So we are actually alongside Border Patrol right now en route to targeted enforcement operations that they have here, where they have these individuals that they know have committed crimes. They're individuals that they consider to be the worst of the worst. We can't disclose the location that we're going to because it does put their safety at risk. That is something that they've certainly been dealing with here with these doxing issues, because right now we know that anti-ICE protesters right now are actually circulating their hotel locations where they're staying at. That information has been compromised. There's at least 20 hotels that are listed that these anti-ICE protesters are circulating where these federal officers and agents are staying at. And we've been told by our sources that these anti-ICE protesters, they have very sophisticated counter surveillance. They're using drones to find these officers and agents conducting these operations. So, of course, they're in plain clothes, unmarked vehicles, things like that, in order to conduct these operations, that they're out, again, trying to get who they consider to be the worst of the worst. And they are showing up to these anti-ICE protesters. They're showing up to the hotels, Blake, that they doxed, and they're actually protesting outside in these kind of no sleep for ICE protests where they're making loud noises to keep agents and officers up in between their operations so that maybe they're not as successful during the day. So take a listen to what the Assistant Chief Patrol Agent from El Centro had to say about them doxing them and how they're not going to stand for any violence against their agents and officers.
Violence against our agents while we're here is not going to be tolerated, and we will repel every attack against our agents, and those that are apprehended assaulting our agents, you will face stiff federal penalties.
Okay, so Blake, DHS actually sent us a statement. They said this administration is not playing games with the lives and safety of our ICE officers. People doxing our officers and impeding ICE operations are siding with vicious cartels, human traffickers, and violent criminals. The LA rioters will not stop our ICE law enforcement. So that's what's happening right now. We are en route to this targeted enforcement. Of course, we'll keep you guys posted. If something happens during your show, we'll jump back in, Blake.
All right, our Allie Bradley, live out on the road. Allie, thanks so much. So law enforcement, as you heard, they're also conducting immigration operations, by the way, outside of places like Home Depot or other storefronts and in the streets, raising questions about where the administration might draw the line. Today, President Trump potentially answered that question talking about farms.
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back. We're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers, and leisure, too, hotels.
According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 42% of farm workers nationwide do not have work authorization. California, the highest share of illegal immigrants working on farms. With us now is the Florida Republican Congresswoman, Kamik. She serves on the House Agriculture Committee. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us tonight.
Absolutely.
In studio once again here on the Hill. So in Florida, your home state, 200,000 ag workers. You heard the president there. What do you believe the line should be as it relates to illegal immigrants on farms and whether or not ICE should go in and deport them?
Well, thanks for having me. A couple things here. So in the previous segment, we were just talking about how our ICE agents are being doxxed.
Yep.
Someone has to point out that the very people who are doxing those agents, committing violence against them, assaulting them, they are wearing masks, right? Because they don't want their identity to be shared. I'm married to a first responder. I take this very personally, and we have to have a zero tolerance policy. So that's first and foremost, and I hope as Americans we can all agree on that fact. Now, you brought up immigration. There is no question that our immigration system is broken, and both Republicans and Democrats have been responsible for not tackling this many, many years ago. It's become a political football that gets kicked back and forth, and particularly as we're talking about hospitality, agriculture, construction.
Yep.
These are industries where we absolutely need to have a fix, and the policies on the books just don't work for us. So you have H-2As, you have H-2Bs, and many people overstay their visas. So the ICE raids that are taking place need to be targeted towards violent criminals and gang members, not after the people who have been in the country who are trying to get into the system and do it the right way.
So no, if it's a farm worker who's not a violent criminal, let him be?
I think that there has to be a pathway forward, but currently there isn't one. And that goes back to Congress not acting. What we are living in is angertainment, where each side just lobs attacks at each other and nothing ever gets done. We need a workable guest worker program in this country, and that is long overdue. Until we do that, you're going to continue to see these stories. But the president's right. We have to figure out a way to get folks who want to work, maybe not even be citizens,
right,
but if they want to work, we should accommodate.
I'm from Florida as well, born and raised, and we know how big the hospitality industry is there. I think it's like 1.3 million in hospitality. So is it the same thing there? If it's someone who doesn't have work authorization and they're working in the hotels, working at the bar, the restaurant, whatever, same thing as it relates to farms. As long as they're not a violent criminal, don't have ICE go in?
I think this goes to the H-2A, H-2B issue, right? If you look at H-2A, these individuals, they're here for a season, right? And you mentioned Florida.
Right.
As Floridians, we can agree, our hospitality season, our tourism season, our agriculture season, this isn't a 10-month deal. It's a year-round exercise. And again, you look at the broken system that we have, none of that is designed to accommodate the realities of the industries that we have. So we need to set that up where they're vetted, we know who they are, they pay into a system that covers like workers' comp and a catastrophic plan, but they shouldn't be eligible for benefits, right?
So the DHS Secretary, Christy Noem, was asked about this because the president brought this up today. First, it was a Truth Social post, and then in the comments that he made there in front of the media today. Here's what the DHS Secretary said. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
I'd encourage you to get on the CBP Home app, and you can self-deport today, and we will facilitate that. If you wait until we have to arrest you, you will never get to be an American, much less live here and work here and be able to pursue the American dream.
So she was touting self-deportations in that CBP app that they have since sort of turned around to allow that. And I guess it gets to the question of who should self-deport, right? Because I heard one thing there, And I heard something, it sounds like different from the president, who's going to take a different stance on farm workers and hospitality workers.
Right. I mean, the president has, as you just heard, he's made it clear that they're going to explore options as it relates to hospitality, construction, and tourism. And that's just the reality of where we are at. I think it comes back to Congress, where it should have been all along, actually tackling the very difficult topic, which is a broken immigration system that needs serious reform.
I guess the question, though, is, right, like, as I hear you talk about this, it's different language than sort of what the president said out on the campaign trail, which was, you know, criminals, get them out. It seemed like he was talking about mass deportations, and now it seems like there might be a carve-out a little bit.
No, I mean, I think, listen, you have people who have, like he said, they've worked on these operations for 20 years. Their families are here. There is a very big difference between the last 4 years of open borders with Joe Biden, where you had 151 different nationalities coming across the border, no vetting, no idea who these people are. Many of them have gang ties, as we have seen. Many of them have violent records, have committed crimes here in the country. Those are the people that need to be targeted right out the gate. And that's what I come back to. We as Americans can agree that we should not allow violent criminals, especially gang members, to be in our nation, in our communities. And then you have individuals who have tried for years and upon years to try to either get legal status or maybe get a work permit. Those are the things that we can work through. I'm confident.
We'll leave it there. She's a Republican from the Sunshine State.
Ooh, dangerous.
I'll just went there. Kat Kamik with us tonight here on the Hill. Thanks so much. Appreciate you coming in. All right, still to come tonight. A Democratic shakeup after 25-year-old David Hogg exit the Democratic National Committee. But this really is a bigger story just about David Hogg. Have you heard what the DNC plans to do from here? And what it says about where that party is at this point in time. Full panel, other side of the break. Stay with us.
Join NewsNation as America celebrates 250 years of the United States Army. We're live from Washington, D.C. for a packed night of coverage. NewsNation's Leland Vittert and Anna Koyman host Tribute to America, Saturday, 6/5 Central.
With Damprid.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So it seemed like the California governor, Gavin Newsom, emerged as the face of the Democratic resistance against Donald Trump. But maybe this might have changed that for a moment at least once the California Senator Alex Padilla was briefly placed today in handcuffs.
Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you don't my hands, go ahead. Stand behind my back.
All right. Cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat. Other hand, sir.
But I want you to take a look at what the official Democratic Party leadership is up to today. These days, at least, members of the DNC have voted to redo the election of their two vice chairs, which had been won by activist turned politician David Hogg, a survivor, by the way, of the 2018 Parkland High School shooting, as well as the Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. Now, rather than attempting to claim the position he'd already successfully gained, Hogg posted a thread on Twitter announcing that he won't be running for vice chair again. And he also derided the party. So what comes next? Well, the DNC will hold two separate virtual votes, one for a male vice chair ballot and another for a vice chair in which any gender candidate can run. This, of course, comes after the same DNC decided last summer to anoint a presidential candidate who didn't win a single primary vote. So is this how they should be operating? Full panel here with me once again. Mick Mulaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House Chief of Staff. Naveen Nayak is the president of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Elizabeth Pipko, former spokesperson for the RNC. And Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaign. Cannonen, what is going on here? Is this how you want the party, the main apparatus, the DNC, running things these days?
Well, look, I think David Hogg had to go. It was the right decision to have this new election, to have a clean slate here. You can't be someone on the outside of the party running primary candidates, you know, within the party apparatus as a leader. And then more than that, I think there was a breach of trust and faith with leadership of that party, who was really trying to do a lot of good work on raising money, on the People's Town Hall, on the new Blueprint platform they've got. You can't do that.
What about that sentence, though, of a one candidate who's a man and another candidate of any gender?
So here's what happens when political bureaucracy just goes on for too long. This is rules stacked on rules, stacked on rules, and stacked on rules. Well-intentioned rules to have inclusivity, to have people come to the table, but over time, every big political organization has this stuff. These are their ruals. Mick thinks they're silly.
No, I'm biting my tongue because I'm going to tell Cannon something he doesn't know. I think we've got the same rules.
Yeah, the reporting...
Let me say that again. Yeah. I think in the Republican National Committee rules, stop me if I'm wrong on this, that our chairman and vice chairman must be different genders.
Aha.
That's true.
Well, I was going to say, that is actually the point. The reason, it sounds the way it's being reported as if the goal is to have as much as you can parity. And I'm not sure there's anyone who's going to say they would feel comfortable if the DNC had just men or just women running the whole thing. And so I don't know that anyone would say this is a terrible idea.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with where things stand right now? Because, this is where the top is 6 months, 7 months after an election where...
Not terrible. This is absolutely a distraction. It's unhelpful. But I agree with Dan that if David Hogg wants to primary Democrats, welcome to do that. There's a lot of opportunities. That's a role to be done outside of the Democratic Party, not within it.
I mean, selfishly, I'm loving this, but this is exactly what was always going to happen. David Hogg was not going to last in this position and take on this party that is still run by establishment voters and establishment donors and establishment leaders. It was never going to work, and he also agrees with maybe 10% of our country, a small faction of those crazy progressives on the left that take over X, so everyone believes that they are the majority, but they are not. So this was never going to last, and it's sad it played out like this, but that's what they deserve.
They're all on blue sky, by the way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so obviously the defining images video of the day is this, which is Senator Alex Padilla at a press conference with Christy Noem, the DHS secretary, and this was sort of the back end of the video. And I just want to go around the table here, Cannon, and I'll start with you. Yeah. When you watch this and what happened and played out, what do you see?
I mean, excessive comes to mind here. And I think if Senator Padilla, who did identify himself, I know there's the issue with the pin, and maybe he should have been wearing the pin, fine. But he identified himself clearly as a United States senator in his home state, and then got shoved out. And then this is the part that gets me. It wasn't just that he was removed from the scene for disrupting a press conference, which last I checked wasn't against the law. And they're putting him on the ground and handcuffing him as though he is this physical threat, which he clearly was not. And he has already identified himself as a U.S. senator. If he can't ask a basic question and be treated with this kind of respect, how is anybody else going through this process? And we know they don't care about the process at all for immigrants or anyone else.
What do you see, Elizabeth?
You know, two things. Number one, I'm sad that people see that around the world, that look at our country and see that happening. Number two, I think it's what you said. This was an attempt to kind of take over the face of the Democrat Party, take a little attention away from Gavin Newsom, send an email to his supporters, get some fundraising dollars in, and move forward.
The thing that this is what we should have expected in what America would become under Trump. We are so divided, and there is nothing Donald Trump is doing to bring this country together. And we are, 150 days into this? He thrives on this. Donald Trump, you think Padilla's excited about this? Yeah. Donald Trump is excited about this. He went into California picking a fight, and we're going to have more of them for the next 3.5 years.
What do you see there, Mick?
I said it the first segment. I said again, I think we're overthinking this. Put yourself in the shoes of the FBI folks, okay? All they know is some guys yelled out in the middle of a press conference. He says, I'm a senator, not a U.S. senator, okay? Not wearing his pin, and all I want to do is try and get the guy out. By the way, raise your hand before now. Maybe you guys could, if you could identify Alex Padilla in a lineup. I couldn't, and I do this for a living, okay? So you put yourself in those folks' shoes. All they know is we got to get this guy out of the room, and we asked him to put his hands up. He didn't. They're going to do this 99 times out of 100. It's not Donald Trump whispering in their ear,
this is not
this
the
guy
president.
and throw him away.
You've seen a lot of elected officials. I remember press conferences with Ron DeSantis and people heckling him, and no one gets arrested.
And my problem here is that look at what Marjorie Taylor Greene said just in the last segment, that he should be prosecuted, charged.
Okay, but that's Marjorie.
And the comment that got him going, the comment that Christy Noem said in her thing was that I'm here, we are here, the troops are here to, in her exact words, liberate California from Democrats.
I gotta run, but I would note a couple days ago the conversation was, is Newsom going to be in handcuffs? Come get me, Donald. It would be bad for him politically. And then what happened 48 hours later? This, right? And we see it with...
And he's loving every minute. He's already on another
That's what some on the other side would
say.
I don't know. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Still to
Berman.
come. A bipartisan gathering at the White House for an annual congressional picnic. But if you think this picnic was a walk in the park, oh boy, do I have a story for you on the other side of the break. And coming up, Elizabeth Vargas reports the cure for alcoholism may already be here. Elizabeth looks into that in about 7 minutes here on News Nation. I'm going to show you what's going on at 1600 Penn on the other side.
Calm.
All right, my take now. Live look at the White House where President Trump is hosting the bipartisan congressional picnic set to take place any moment now. It's typically ants that can ruin a picnic, right? But this is D.C. after all, and political pests come in much bigger sizes. Among those attending tonight, Senator Rand Paul. President Trump today acknowledging the senator.
I look forward to seeing him, actually. I like him. He's the hardest vote in the history of the U.S. Senate.
Now, we bring it up because at one point the senator said he had been disinvited to the feast as he doesn't really have an appetite for the one big, beautiful bill and how it currently stands.
Not for adding to the debt. I don't think it's very conservative to raise the debt ceiling. This will be an historic increase in the debt ceiling.
But the president says that was never the case, and that, of course, the senator and his family were invited to the picnic. A nice ending, right? Well, someone might not be having dessert, because the Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, also from Kentucky, who also opposes the big, beautiful bill and whose invitation remained rescinded as of this morning. Massie taking to social media today, calling it incredibly short-sighted, noting even how Nancy Pelosi was invited. So you thought your summer picnic had a little drama to it? Well, this is D.C., where not even a picnic is a walk in the park, even if the foliage happens to be the South Lawn. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on the Hill. There's always news coming out of this town, one form or another, the White House, the Hill, you name it. We'll be on it tomorrow. I thank you so much for watching. I'm Blake Burman.